Welcome to the California School Choice Foundation monthly meeting. There's lots of news, lots of things breaking, but to start, as our tradition is, we open with an invocation to be presented by Dr. Dale Broom. Dale.
Let's go ahead and bow our heads and we'll just pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this historic opportunity that you have given us to help parents and students be able to get a better education in this state. We're excited about how you're working behind the scenes to raise up volunteers, money, public support for the school choice initiative. And we have been crying out to you as parents and grandparents, crying out that our children can get a better education and that they would be able to be rescued from the propaganda and the things that are being taught in the public school so that they can receive the proper moral formation and training along with their education, Lord. We pray that, Father, you would bless our efforts as we try to organize and prepare to bring this initiative before the people. And we pray that, Father, you would raise up immense support and that we would be able to get this on the ballot. We pray all this now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dale. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. There's lots and lots of news. There's lots of things breaking. For example, there was a brand new poll that just appeared in the news talking about people's opinions about bringing school choice to the state of California. The numbers looked awfully good for what we're doing. We're about to set forth on a new adventure, and it's a great challenge. But our focus today, and you'll hear it throughout this meeting, is it is time that we start planning on where we're going to be, where we're going to be collecting signatures. Right now, if you are going to get involved, and I trust everyone on this call is, think about places you can go, you can be. Is it in front of your church? Is there a spot where you can set up a table on the sidewalk? Now is the time to start planning those places, put it in your schedule, and let our people know so we can put it up on the map so we know people will look for you. We're expecting to turn the troops loose sometimes early in October, so please get ready. That said, I would like to introduce you to our president, our chairman of the board, Michael Alexander. Michael.
Hey, very good. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everybody, for joining me on a beautiful Sunday afternoon here in California. This is why we live here. It's a truly wonderful and golden state. We're about to make it a whole lot better. What we're have been doing here for the last several months, I got to cover some old territory because we have a lot of new people on our cast here. Our primary purpose here currently in the California School Choice Foundation is not only to educate parents about the problems in the public schools, of which they're well aware, and some of the interim solutions that they can employ, for example, opting out of sex ed, fighting back phony social and racial theories and so forth. But most importantly, we have to restore the primacy of the family in the educational process. And the only way to do that is to change how we finance education here in California to make sure that the money follows the student. Our program here has 4 points, you know them well, and this is all the average voter needs to know, that we're going to, under the Education Freedom Act, create, number one, an education savings account for every child in K-12 child in California wanting one. Number two, annually, that child will receive his share of Prop 98 funds, and that currently is around $12,600 per year, going up soon to almost $14,000 in the next budget after this one. Number three, the parents, not the politicians, can direct that money to a participating school, whether it's a current public school, charter school, or an accredited private or parochial school. There will be changes on that one, by the way. Number 4, any money left over can be saved by the parents and used by the student for college at any accredited institution in the United States, including vocational training or other qualified educational expenses. It is quite simply radical. That is very basic, goes back to the root of our society, putting parents in charge of their education, their children's education, as they have both a natural and a divine right to do so. Anyone who is listening to radio or television knows that school choice is very much on the mind of everyone in the country because of the cultural and political imperialism that we are experiencing at the hands mostly of two powerful teacher unions who run our schools. We intend to fight back against that by getting the children out of this system, depending upon the choice of the parents. And to quote a friend of mine here, if you want your public school, if you like your public school, you can keep your public school. No one is going to force you to go to private or religious school. Your choice is to opt in or stay where you're at. We make no efforts to change anything that's going on in the school system. It'll be revenue neutral. That is, we will not be taxed to any greater extent than we are. The revenue will be the same. The only difference is how we're funding school education. The money will follow the child rather than the school or the zip code or the institution or the union or the failed teaching system. It'll follow the child. This is as it should be. Let's bear in mind that the system that we call public schools, as we know them, has only been in the United States for about 100 years. And now we know that this system has failed us because it has put the government in charge of our children's education rather than us. As a result, we are seeing social and political indoctrination rather than education taking place in our schools. In fact, the schools are no longer even staffed. And as we approach this coming year, we can see again that the teacher unions have no intention of actually fully reopening the schools or going back to full-time teaching. They're doing half the work for the same salary. It should come as a surprise to no one on this broadcast that our polling now shows that school choice in California, even with very conservative polling, shows that 55% minimum of the citizens here in California support school choice or some form of it. And that includes Democrats. It includes all racial groups, all ethnic groups. School choice, the idea that we have proposed, has garnered support across racial groups, across religious groups. In other words, it's American. We here in the California School Choice Foundation and the future committee to be established are a nonpartisan organization. We welcome Democrats, and we have many of them who support us. And I can tell you this, unlike many people who write articles or people who merely talk about these subjects, our volunteers and our members have been out spreading the word about school choice in every possible venue. And we have obtained signatures supporting our future efforts here from thousands upon thousands of California parents, and politics never once came up. Their children did. We're moving to that. And this is why the polling is showing more, and you can imagine what is going to happen when we get the bill. Let's talk about the bill. You know, I got a nasty note from somebody here this morning. I should say a frustrated note. He says, Mike, where's the bill? Where's the bill? Well, the bill is based on the Morlock bill. It's up there on the website. But I can tell you that even among friendly voices and friendly supporters, there has been a struggle to get true, authentic, full school choice of the type that I just described to you. And the reluctance is because of the anticipated ferocious attack and opposition by the teachers' unions and other special interests who together consume over $122 billion a year, 40% of the California budget, and produce nothing for it. That attack will be vicious. Many think that we need to trim this back. We need to phase it in. We need to make it tested by means. In other words, have you file your income tax statement with the school secretary to make sure that even after you paid more taxes than anybody else, you now have to qualify for the same scholarship that you now receive free in public school. We rejected class warfare. We rejected any phony means testing, any racial tests, anything else. This is fully American. This is fully Californian. Getting this bill written and written in such a way, Richard, you know who you are out there, written in such a way that we're able to effectively push back at the government when, not if, they try to play with accreditation. When, not if, they try to transform private schools into public schools or government schools through the vehicle of curriculum mandates. When, not if, they try to isolate people who are providing religious instruction to their children. And if you don't think we have a battle coming in that area that takes time to legislate, Richard, you're just not paying attention, because the government here has acknowledged no limits in what it will do, and it has come into our churches, into our neighborhoods, and has attempted to shut us down. That's the kind of battle that we're up against, and the foundation for that kind of dark future is being laid in K-12. They intend to educate, to indoctrinate, and to intimidate students while they're in high school, so they will become the kind of government creatures, the kind of easy voters that they want in the future. Parents across the state reject this arrangement. They know what's going on. The parents in the inner city, and many of them, not even Americans, but they're parents, and they think like Americans. They have rejected this arrangement. They've chosen to vote for themselves, for their future, and for their children's future. They reject this entirely. All they want is the same shot that they're entitled to. And we as Americans, especially those of us who are older, those of us who have the means to speak, the education to speak, we have a special obligation to go out and speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. That includes most of the people who are poor and in the inner city. They don't even have any idea how our government works, much less how to be politically effective. That's where we're going to change the state. And nobody has to change their party. Nobody has to vote our way on other issues. They just need to vote for themselves. We, you and I, will be attacked as racists. We will be called Republican stalking horses. We will be called all kinds of things, because what we are pushing forward with is our basic American values. And yes, those values are rooted in our shared faith, and sometimes not faith. Now, in today's program, we're going to have an examination of some of these issues. Steve will introduce them bit by bit. We're going to have a discussion of the biblical basis for the parental control of education. We are also going to have a tape here later on from a well-known lady in New York who's been on the news of late. And in 14 minutes, she'll show you how to talk back to school boards and to the imperialists that are running our system and all the indoctrinators. And did I mention that although she's Christian, her family is Muslim? That's correct. One of the big charges that will be leveled against us is that somehow we're just an instrument of the Christian religious right. That kind of bigotry and slurs will be uttered all the time. As a matter of fact, we represent all Californians. We represent the consensus of all religions who want to pursue it their way. And if these objectionable doctrines, whether they be in the area of sex or government or politics or race, if you want those things taught to your children, that's fine. You leave your children right where they are, and they'll get indoctrinated however you want them to be. But you will have that choice. And that's all we're talking about is choice, control over your own children's lives and futures. We will go on at the end. I'll come back on because I want to talk about some of the exciting developments in the support that we have for our program. Our fundraising is coming along splendidly. And most importantly, we expect to have title and summary submitted to the Attorney General here no later than the first part of July, which means that we'll get actually a petition, a piece of paper that we can actually start getting signatures on by the middle of September, which means right now during the rest of this program, I want you to think of what church, what school, what grocery store, fire hydrant, or taco stand that you can be in front of during those critical 30 days. We want hundreds, several thousand events. We want to let the opposition know that we're coming back for our children. I want to thank you all for being here. Steve, this is back to you, buddy. Take care.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you. In a sense, we are very, very blessed. Never in the history of California has there been a better time or a better moment than right now to make this effort to put forth an initiative to bring school choice to the parents and people of California. We have two things going for us. One, with the advent of the COVID virus and the massive lockdowns, parents for the first time have discovered the real colors of the teachers union, and they've learned, unfortunately, some of the things that their children are being taught, and especially things their children are not being taught. The poor academic performance, the sex education, the philosophical changes going away from our traditional Western civilization, and if you will, the American dream, to something that's really quite different. The other blessing that we've had was the Recall Newsom campaign, which taught us how to do it and how much energy there is, and how the real work and the real magic comes from people like yourselves who care, who are concerned, and are willing to get involved. And frankly, they don't need anyone else's help. They figure it out on their own, and they go out and do the work. There are two ladies in Ventura that are such people, and I spent some time talking to them, and I was extremely inspired. And to tell you how they did it and what motivated them and how you can actually go out and do that work of collecting signatures, I now would like to introduce you to the fabulous two, Tamara and Cheryl.
Tama. It's Tama.
Tama, I'm sorry.
So Cheryl and I have put together a presentation, and the basis of the presentation, or the goal of this presentation, is to give you hints and ideas on how to organize to successfully collect accurate and valid signatures. And it's based on our 9 months of experience collecting wet signatures for the Recall Gavin 2020 campaign. And we recognize before we jump into this that there's many, many different ways to gather signatures, everything from canvassing door to door, attending events, rallies, tables in front of churches, retail stores, farmers markets. They all work. But the tips we're going to share with you will work in any venue or method of signature collection. And we're going to go ahead and review this kind of reproducible process and focus on how to set up a signing station with pop-up tents, because we ended up realizing that worked best for us here in Ventura County. We implemented this with between 7 and 10 weekly stations. We collected over 30,000 signatures for the county. That was just slightly over half of the 58,000 or so that were collected in the county. These pop-up stations kind of were born out of the hostile 2020 political environment and the COVID mask hysteria. So we had volunteers that were being harassed and threatened at tables in front of markets and supermarkets and retail outlets. And we decided that, you know what, let's just do a pop-up tent. That's our own space. People aren't going to bother us, and it worked. So we started off with one station, and out of that one station, we grew to a height of 10. And these people brought in anywhere from 100 to 300 signatures a day. And we were actually more visible with these pop-up stations because we had them all decorated with tents and banners and flags, and we were in very high traffic locations in the corner of very busy shopping centers. So with that, I think it's super important that everybody on this call understands their First Amendment right in the context of something called the 1980 Pruneyard ruling. It was Pruneyard versus Robbins. And you need to understand this ruling. You need to carry it with you. And if you know your rights, you will be confident in any circumstance. So Cheryl's going to go through that ruling real quickly. We have a link in this slide that, we're happy to share these slides with people. But you're going to want to have a copy of this when you're collecting signatures. Cheryl?
Yeah, hi. So the Pruneyard case was decided in 1980, and you should, like Tama said, click on it and print it out. It comes from a case up in Northern California in Campbell. The shopping center kicked out petitioners that were collecting signatures in a public gathering area. They sued and they won. You need to print it out and keep it with you at your table or your station. If someone tells you to leave, say, feel free to call law enforcement. We have a right to be here. If law enforcement comes, then you show them the ruling. And if the officer doesn't recognize it, you ask him to call his superior. Most officers were on our side, but obviously you never want to argue with an officer if they insist you leave. I doubt the California School Choice Foundation will pay your legal fees, but you should not ever be afraid to set up. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose. In our experience, the Pruneyard ruling was enough to stand your ground. And you need to, like it says, minimum 4 stores is considered public.
Right, and that's the key. So if you're in a parking lot that's shared by a minimum of 4 stores, it is no longer a private parking lot. It is considered a public parking lot. And so do not set your tent station into desirable parking spaces. Put it in the corner where there's a lot of active traffic and plenty of parking where people can, pull right in and jump out and sign. So Cheryl's going to talk about the signing or tent or table station that you have. Regardless, keep it simple. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, so if you want to use a pop-up tent, make sure you have weights for windy days, and I'd always keep them with me. You want a minimum of 2 school choice banners, preferably with grommets in it, so you can hang them from your pop-up tent with bungee cords. Consider having American flags. They help draw attention to your station. I would avoid tablecloths. They're just trouble when it's windy and something else. You don't really need them. We have our volunteers bring their own chairs, and all you need are 2 volunteers. Clipboards. You should have clipboards labeled by county. Post-it notes are helpful to keep the signatures from running into outside of the box and keep their signatures inside the boxes. And make sure you just use only standard black or blue ballpoint pens, no gel pens, they smear, and no colored pens. You also want to have a volunteer sign-up sheet, a donation jar, and I sign stickers. And Tama will tell you more about that. So here's a picture of the tent. You can see the banners with the bungee cords and the weights that we have on them. And that's what you should have.
Yep, 2 American flags, and we're right on the corner. This is Target parking lot in Camarillo. We were right on the corner, very active location. Out of this one location, 9 other stations popped up because volunteers wanted to go out and set up their own.
Wow.
And, you need a minimum of 4 directional signs for your station if you're in a busy center, so that traffic coming in and out of all the other avenues can find your location. And hang them high if you're having trouble with people stealing your signs.
And they will. And they did.
Yeah, so we ended up zip tying them up. My husband brings a ladder and zip ties them up.
They were stolen, defecated on, urinated on, torn up, thrown out. It was a battle. Clipboard, Cheryl?
So these are clipboards labeled by counties because Tim, I tell you about mixing signatures.
Yeah, so one of the things that will be a death wish on collecting signatures is mixing signatures between counties. So if you have an LA County signature on a Ventura County page, it doesn't count. And what happens is the coordinators then have to send out a letter, stamped envelope, new petition, send it out to that person in LA County and have them re-sign. So the most important thing that you can do is go for accuracy. We had I think, what was it, Cheryl, 98% accuracy rate at our stations, because people that want to sign, they want their signatures to count. So that's right out of the gate. Make sure you've got a high accuracy rate.
Now, this is an example of a clipboard that you would use for large events, which draw from many counties. You just want to use one clipboard in that case and use some Post-it tabs to separate by counties.
Yeah, this is the clipboard this is the clipboard that we took to the walkaway movements in Beverly Hills, where we had many, thousands of people and multiple counties, and one clipboard with tabs for the different counties. I can't stress this enough. This is why we ended up with 9 stations. So we had a volunteer sheet at every single station, print their first name, last name. On this volunteer sheet, you do not see a column for city. You will definitely want a column for city. We learned very quickly that people in Ventura are not, that willing to drive up to Thousand Oaks to volunteer. They like to roll out of bed and travel a short distance to a signing station where they can volunteer. This was the key to us growing into 10 different stations from one. And we also ordered 2x2 iSign stickers. They're a very cheap way to advertise your station and to ensure that you're getting accurate signatures. So what we did is after people signed, we checked them, our volunteers checked their signatures. If they were correct, they got an iSigned little sticker. They wore that sticker out shopping for the day, and if somebody commented on it, they told them where we were and sent them our way. They were, I think in the end, we ended up handing out nearly 25,000 of these stickers to people that signed just here in Ventura County. I would also consider a donation jar, or we fully funded all of our stations, banners, yard signs, pens, clipboards, and all our iSign stickers. They were all self-funded. What we ended up doing is we ended up saying to people, I need a new banner. We want to set up a new station. My banner is going to cost me $40. Can you give me $40 and buy me a new banner? We just had 5 yard signs stolen at our stations. I need $15 more for a yard sign. So people were actually buying us, I need 10 clipboards to open up my new station. So that's how we build that process. We also got enough donations, believe it or not, to get a mobile signing station. A friend of mine loaned me this trailer. Another friend donated the wrap, and this mobile signing station went out to bigger events. We just plopped up American flags, pulled down the back of the Land Cruiser, sign. That was our mobile signing station, which we also took to areas where our tents got kicked out, because you are allowed to stand by your vehicle and collect signatures. So Cheryl, you want to cover some tips?
Yeah, some tips is the goal is always accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. You want to make sure that you have accuracy. I can't stress that enough. And so one way is to keep only the clipboard for the county you were in on the table and the other county clipboards off the table. And when someone comes to sign, you first question is, what county are you registered to vote in? If they're not registered to vote, you need to memorize registertovote.ca.gov. They can stand there and register to vote on their phone and then sign the petition. Don't talk to them while they're signing. Give them the instructions and then be quiet, because they'll make a mistake, they'll forget something. Then you check their work and give them a sticker. Again, Post-it notes helps keep them in the box. If they don't know which address they're registered to vote at, they sign for every address they have. That may be 3 different signatures. I had someone like living in 3 different places, didn't know where he was registered to vote. Well, okay, you sign 3 times, all at the one for each of your addresses. And if one of those addresses is in another county, then pull out the other county sheet. And if they don't know how, they can't remember how they register to vote in terms of their name, they can check their driver's licenses. That's the easiest way. And don't forget to ask them to sign up to volunteer, or ask them if they'd like to help you multiply and purchase a banner or sign and make a donation. So if you want to turn 1 signature into 10, you need to use a DIY kit. It's a do-it-yourself kit. What is that? It's a blank petition, an instruction sheet, and a self-addressed stamped envelope. DIY kits took the Newsom recall over the top. So what you would do is, after they sign and finish signing, you ask them, do you know anyone else who wants to sign? And they say, oh yeah, I got 5 people who will sign. That's great. So you're going to give them a petition to collect those 5 people. Then you're going to give them a petition to give to each of those 5 people. So when they walk away, they should have 6 DIY kits in their hand. And that's how you keep multiplying. So every signature you get should be multiplied by asking them this question. And they can either return them in the envelope, or they can bring them back to any pop-up tent and drop them off, or they can go to any of the permanent signing locations and turn them in. But you need to have those DIY kits. This is just an example of the petition from Newsom. Highlighted would be making sure that you point out to them not to mix county signatures, because that's important, and that they have to complete the declaration at the bottom. And the next slide would be like the instruction sheet that was on the Newsom website. And then an address that's stamped with the address from the website on the envelope, so that they can mail it back if they don't want to drop it off somewhere.
Right. And I can't express enough how this really took us over the top. So, after they'd sign, we'd move the person over to the second volunteer at the tent, and they would talk about, okay, do you know anybody? This is what you need to do. We do a quick little training session on how, to make sure the signatures count. And I would say every week we probably got, I'm going to say, a minimum of 20 to 25 signatures coming back to the tents where people had taken them home. They didn't want to mail them in. They just brought them back to the tents and we turned them in. So this is a key way of multiplying that 1 signature and turning it into, 10 or more. A quick comment about this. I don't know if we have this coming up. What you definitely want to do, and I'm sure this will be the case in the school choice initiative, you want to instruct people not to photocopy the petitions. And the reason being is the Secretary of State has some very, very strict guidelines and rules about the margins in these petitions. And if you copy them on a copier, they can be skewed. and the margins will be off kilter and the entire page will get thrown out. So hopefully there'll be on the website a way to download and print the petitions as well as instructions. So one of the reasons I think that we had about 300 volunteers that had signed up to volunteer at these stations. We had 150 active volunteers, and we had enough volunteers to staff these stations every single weekend for 9 months. And one of the reasons is I believe we made it really easy for people to come back. We used a free limited service called Sign Up Genius, and you can bump that up for a little bit more robust feature rich system of Sign Up Genius. But basically what Sign Up Genius does is you create an invitation and it just copies it from week to week, and then the system itself will send out emails automatically when it's triggered, and then your volunteers will sign up to this for the shifts in the stations that they want to participate. So this is an example of the shifts that we did. We did very short, sweet, 9 to noon, noon to 3, 3 to 6, and a couple people staffed. And people would work, 2 to 3 hour shifts. When daylight savings time converted, we ended up going from 10 to 4 because it was just getting too dark by 5 o'clock. But this was another key about keeping our volunteers active and organized. They knew every Sunday night that they would get an invitation from Sign Up Genius to pick a slot to sign up at a tent. The system also reminds them, so later in the week they get a reminder, and it just automated the whole volunteer sign up process. And we only had to make calls later in the week if we had like that empty petition noon to 3 spot right there. Then we had a database, if you will, of volunteers that we knew we could count on. Hey, can you work noon to 3? We need to keep, Ventura open. Cheryl, you want to go through the summary?
So you can do this. There are many different venues for signature collections, but know your rights, keep PruneYard handy, stand your ground, and accuracy. Ensure that every signature you get will count. Use the do-it-yourself kits to multiply your efforts. Turn 1 into 10. Avoid burnout. Recruit an army of volunteers so people don't burn out. Encourage volunteers to mobilize in their local ethnic communities. We had this wonderful Vietnamese lady that would come and volunteer, and then whenever she would go to Los Angeles to her ethnic community events, she would go take her little table herself or take her clipboard with petitions, and she'd come back with signatures. So encourage them to all of your volunteers to do the same. Leverage the technology and stay organized, like Sign Up Genius will allow, and stay active on social media to post your signing locations. Post them in all your groups, post them Facebook, whatever social media you have, post them. And people will begin to know that you're here, but it's still hard to get the word out to everyone, but just keep trying and have people keep sharing, and everyone who comes to sign, tell them to let everyone know you're here. You're at your location. Yep.
Okay.
Have fun.
Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions for you. This is Stephen.
Yep.
Okay.
And let me see. Let me understand. Were you people paid?
No.
Totally. Were they supplying you these printed materials and the tents and the signs and the sign-up kits? So you self-funded?
We were completely self-funded. We were able to access the instructions and the petitions and the graphics for the signs and the yard signs that we had made. All of the graphics and we were able to access from the website. So, and that was the brilliant move of the Recall Gavin campaign, is they standardized their graphics. They branded the recall very, very well. So everything was very, very well branded, and I hope that's happening behind the scenes here as well, with some serious branding about school choice or educational choice.
We are working on it. It's not where it needs to be yet, but we are working on that. I see Todd Madison has his hand up. Do you have a question, Todd?
Two questions though. I was a paid petition gatherer for a while back in 2018, and there's just a couple of things that I was kind of questioning. Is that first of all, when you say to get 3 signatures, if they're at 3 different addresses, doesn't the fact that you have 2 invalid signatures create a problem when it comes to looking at because they look at the overall percentage of invalid signatures when they do this? They don't check, every single one, they sample, right? Isn't that an issue?
Well, it didn't come up very often, but you don't want to lose the signature. It's my understanding. Maybe Tama can better explain.
Well, my understanding, we didn't want to lose this. Like Cheryl said, it did not come up very often. It was very, very rare. I mean, I actually didn't even run into that. I think Cheryl might have been the only one. And the other reason for the high accuracy rate, and we didn't learn this until later on in the game in the Recall Gavin, and I'm going to speak very loosely on the facts here, but my understanding is that somewhere around 96 to 98%, the counties actually can just start, if you've got a high accuracy rate, the counties can just start doing kind of random sampling instead of having to count every signature.
Yeah.
And so that's why the name of the game is accuracy, and do not mix those signatures up between counties. And that has to be the word out of the chutes.
Now,
and don't deny anyone to sign.
So it's a moot point, kind of, is what I'm hearing, is that it's not that much of a factor. But the second issue is that we were really, we stationed like right outside the door of Walmart. I mean, we weren't in the parking lot. We were like right there at the door. And I can tell you, I was often getting somewhere upwards of 10 or 15 signatures an hour just by myself there, because people are just passing right by. They don't even have to find you. Could you not do that, or?
Yeah, here's the difference.
I was at Walmart.
Yeah.
At one time outside with the table, but I stayed like 20 feet from the door, from the entrance and the exits.
Yeah.
And people just come by and would sign, but you can get more if you have a busier location.
Yeah. I mean, we had the same instructions you guys did about calling the police and, the whole thing as far as that goes. I never had to do it. Walmart's all understood it.
This is Stephen. I have one last question because we need to move on. And that is, did you find it more effective to have those recurring locations so the people in the neighborhood always knew a table was going to be at one spot, so they knew how to refer their friends? Is that true?
Yes and no. Yes, in some areas. I know 3 of our stations, they kind of got location fatigue. That's because the volunteers could only be out there on a certain day of the week. And so they would move around depending on, and it was very, very odd year because of all the lockdowns, and it was just a very odd time. So some of our stations did end up kind of moving around, especially in Ventura, where they got what I call, location fatigue. But everybody knew that the target station in Camarillo was going to be there every weekend. They'd send people down. I think the same thing with Cheryl up in Newberry Park, Thousand Oaks area.
Well, thank you so much. You give us a lot to think about. This is being recorded. And if you don't mind, this might end up being posted on our website, your presentation, if that's all right with you guys.
Fine by us.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to move on. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Dale Broom, and has some comments about the relationship between school choice and our issues with the church.
What I wanted to talk about was relevant to our kickoff, which is going to be the first Sunday and Saturday weekend of October, where we're going to be doing a Super Sunday outreach to churches and trying to collect signatures for our ballot initiative in the churches. And so the comments that I have right now, I want to apply mostly to the Christian churches, but it also is applicable to other faiths, whether you're Jewish, involved in a synagogue, you're Muslim, involved in a mosque, that type of thing. The big thing is we need to have houses of worship and their leaders stand in support of school choice. And I wanted to just talk about why churches should support school choice. And the first reason is, one, to assist parents in the academic and moral formation of their children. And Mike mentioned this earlier in his initial remarks, but God has given the parents, not the government, not the Department of Education, and not the local school board, the primary responsibility to educate their children. Yes, parents can delegate part of that responsibility to the schools, but ultimately it is their responsibility to ensure that their child receives a quality academic education and does their homework and receives the concomitant moral training that is necessary. And we're reminded in Scripture, Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go, even when he grows older, he will not abandon it. In Deuteronomy 11:18-19, it says, you shall therefore take these words of mine to heart and to soul, and you shall tie them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be a frontlet on your forehead, and you shall also teach your sons, speaking of them when you sit in your house, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. So from the very foundation of this country, the academic education of our citizens was inextricably linked to the moral formation of our citizens. And we go back and look at the early books that were used to teach our children. You can look at the New England Primer, the McGuffey Readers, and they were replete with biblical references and moral instructions and warnings for children. The moral principles taught in the churches on Sunday was to be reinforced, not undermined, by the school teachers when the kids went to school Monday through Friday. So basically, an unwritten covenant was established between the parents and the government to allow the government to instruct their children in the public schools as long as the education did not undermine the values and morals that the parents and our religious leaders instill into our children. However, progressively over the last 50 years, the government-run schools, the judges, politicians, and teachers' unions have breached this covenant with the parents by removing prayer from the schools, teaching evolution, religious pluralism, comprehensive sex education, gender fluidity, LGBTQ lifestyles, critical race theory, goes on, including social justice, Black Lives Matter principle, Marxism, and anti-Americanism. And we are seeing these progressively work their way into our public school curriculum. And finally now, the last straw that broke the camel's back is the shutting down of our government-run schools for an entire year. And it's to the point now where enough is enough. Parents are fed up. It's now time for parents to take back control of their child's education by getting school choice in the state. This will allow them to use state education dollars to send their child to a private religious school or provide a faith-based home education so that their morals and values can be reinforced in that education process. So the second reason why churches really should be involved in the school choice movement and support it is to prevent the deception and moral corruption of our youth. This can positively influence our culture. And we're reminded of a teaching that Jesus taught in Matthew 18:6. He says, but whoever causes one of these little ones, the children, who believe in me to sin, it is better for him to have a millstone be hung around his neck and that he be drowned in the depths of the sea. So this is a warning to our culture and to our society not to mess with our kids' minds. The churches have a historic opportunity in this school choice initiative to get back involved in education and teach the next generation strong academics and a biblical worldview and a true moral compass. But if the churches fail to step up and help parents rescue children from the propaganda in the government-run schools, God will hold them accountable. So did you know that children and graduates of private schools participating in school choice programs have a statistically significant reduction in criminal activity and criminal convictions, over 20 to 40% reduction. They have greater voter registration, greater voter turnout, greater community service activity, patriotism, and respect for the rights of others. So you can see that if we can take back control of the education and allow these kids to get into a private school or get a faith-based home education, this can positively influence our culture and help our children to stay away from these immoral activities. So finally, the other third reason that churches need to get involved in this is that if they get involved in school choice and set up private Christian schools and religious schools, this will help grow the church and other houses of worship. Okay, the school choice provides an unparalleled opportunity for churches, synagogues, and other houses of worship to establish a private school or host homeschool co-ops. For instance, my school or my church that I go to right now, just this year, started a homeschool co-op that's meeting on our campus at our church. Even though we don't have an official private school, they're supporting a Christian-based home education. So, and what's cool and what's really exciting about the school choice, it gives them the finances to be able to sustain a private school. This will give more California children the opportunity to receive a Christian or other religious education. It provides a private religious education should not just be for the wealthy. And you know, some people say, well, we don't want to get involved in this, so we'll let the public schools educate our kids. Well, what happens is the wealthy end up sending their kids to private schools, but the poor cannot afford to do that. With our initiative, it's going to be made available to all children in California. And if the church refuses to support school choice, they're in a sense supporting the status quo and discriminating against the poor and preventing them from getting a quality faith-based education. So the other thing that's important to point out is that more children that hear the gospel and the biblical teachings through a Christian private school or religious-based private school, they're going to be more likely to embrace that faith, to start attending that church, and their families will also follow, and this will help grow the churches. So in summary, basically, the churches really do need to get involved in the school choice movement. It's really going to help more kids get a faith-based education and will help grow the churches as well. But you might ask yourself, hold on there, is school choice really legal? You know, we have in our state constitution an amendment called the Blaine Amendment that prohibits public education dollars from being used for religious or faith-based education. This is an old, antiquated, anti-Catholic law that was put into our state constitution, and it has now been determined by our Supreme Court to be outdated, and particularly if our state enacts a school choice law, that Blaine Amendment can be superseded. And we had a recent legal decision by the Supreme Court back last summer called Espinoza versus the state of Montana that verified that if a school or if a state passes a school choice initiative, they can indeed allow those funds to go to a private religious education and school. So the challenge that I want to lay out before each and every one of you today is I want each one of you to go to your pastor, your elder, your priest, your rabbi, and talk with them and say, Pastor, I would like you to support our school choice effort for these reasons that I just mentioned. And then ask them if you can set up a table at the church to hand out literature and invite them to sign the school choice initiative, particularly on that Super Sunday, Saturday and Sunday, October 2nd and 3rd. I want to urge you, though, you may want to go ahead and start doing this right now and maybe even set up a school choice information table beforehand this summer. Allow them to sign our Connect sheets or do that online. Ask them to volunteer for Super Sunday. So go ahead and start making that effort to get the volunteers and to get the support from the pastoral staff to do that. And so that's all I have to share, but I really want to urge you guys to get your churches involved in our school choice effort. Thank you.
Thank you much for those inspiring words, Dale. I would like to remind everybody that our issue is freedom. Our issue is your choice to be able to put your kids, your students into the school that best suits your personal values and better addresses your children's special needs and talents. So if you really like what they're teaching in the public schools and you're thinking they're doing a great job, we're saying go ahead, you can put them there. But if there's another place where you can where you believe will better serve your children, then we want to be able to give you that option. We are not saying you must go to a Christian school or an Islamic school or any kind of school in particular. It is your choice. It is always your choice. We may have personal preferences, but the bill makes no advocacy. It is totally about bringing freedom and our original, if you will, founding principles of freedom of religion, freedom of speech, back into the public square where we seem to have lost it. With that, I would like to turn the meeting back over to Michael Alexander for his closing messages. Michael.
There we are. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, Dr. Broom and Tama and Cheryl for your wonderful presentations here. You know, we're going to try to keep this a little short. This video of Tatiana Ibrahim in New York, we're going to post that up on our website. We don't want to keep it too much longer here this afternoon. I'll make a short summary and then open it up to questions and inquiries from folks here. So you've heard what we're talking about. It's all about activism. Whatever we were doing 6 months ago or 2 months ago, the calendar has changed all that. We are on track. You know what today is, don't you? If you went to a normal school before, it's June 6th. And on June 6th, 1944, it was D-Day, in which the Allies and especially the Americans launched a great offensive across English Channel to retake the continent and to defeat Nazi Germany. That date was set. They didn't know which day exactly was going to be, but they knew they were going sometime in May or June. We are fortunate. We know with more precision what it's going to be. We should have title and summary back by the first part of September. So what we want to do now is to be active and to prepare as if we knew we were going to be there, which you are. So what I ask each of the it's now 59 people on this broadcast, I would ask you to send us an email, send us a chat, do whatever. Let us know what church you go to, what church you are close to, even if you don't believe or practice a religion, what friends that you have who can be at a church, because what we want to do on what we call Super Sunday, we want to be in front of as many churches as we can on Super Sunday. But we also have other events. Back to School Week, which is the last week in October, last week in September, first week in October. If you have children in the school, if you're nearby a school, let us know. We will similarly equip you so that you can be visiting with parents who are waiting for you out there to sign this petition. They need help. It's on the way. This is what we're trying to do. We have to be active. Now, why do I want you to do it? Well, aside from the fact it's what we have to do so we can have a huge first 30 days, this is extremely important to investors that they know. When I say investors, big political contributors, they want to know how their money is going to be used. And we're asking for money in the tens of millions, ladies and gentlemen. That's what it's going to take to fight this war. And what we're actually doing, and I want to add one thing to Tama and Cheryl's presentation. There's one other thing that we're doing that nobody else has done before, and that is the second signature. Because under California law, when we get that petition with a signature on it, the official petition, we can make no other use of that petition other than to turn it in. We cannot copy the name down and send them a note thanking them. But if somebody signs that second piece of paper, just like that little volunteer sheet, so when Mrs. Gomez comes up to you and she tearfully signs it, joyfully signs it, you say, well, look, we'd like to keep you informed of this. Give me your initials over here, and we'll make sure I got your email and your telephone number, your cell phone, and we'll keep you posted on this. Now, when she gets home, she hasn't forgotten, because you, the volunteer, our system, is going to send her a note letting her know, thanking her for her support and letting her know what we can do. Our job is not just to gather 1 million valid signatures, which is what we require to qualify a constitutional initiative for the ballot. Our goal, ladies and gentlemen, is 1 million relationships, which nobody in these efforts ever entertains. Our goal isn't really to get the signature. What we have to do is to create the relationships so that 18 months from now, we can get it passed. And we can't get out the vote ultimately if we don't know who to call. We don't even know who our supporters are. Gathering signatures in political terms is actually dead space. That's time that is wasted because you can't get out the vote. But if you gather that second signature, as we will develop relationships and we will be ready to go forward. And by the way, the recall campaign did a pretty darn good job of doing that. They gathered a lot of signatures in a lot of ways, so they know who actually supports the recall petition. By the way, we're nonpartisan. We use it as an example. I could give many good examples of political effectiveness from the Obama campaigns, Organizing for America. These people have been enormously effective. We, again, are nonpartisan. That's what we want to do, but the investors need to know that we're organized, that we're operating, and every time you put up there this week, starting today, send me an email, say, Mike, I'll be out in front of the Beth Shalom temple. I'll be out in front of Wilshire Temple on that date. We have a big tent. Let's get people in there. It's hugely, hugely important. I want to conclude here, open up to questions, but I want to conclude here by thanking everybody. The kind of support that we're getting is incredible. While I was here, I got an email message from some ladies up in Lake Tahoe. They're having a big seminar on school issues, and they heard about us. They heard about us because of you. We are having a tremendous impact. We're on media and everything else that is get nothing but better from here. So, we're now at 10 past the hour. We like to stick to about an hour. If there are questions, please, complaints, comments, requests for mercy, whatever, go ahead and pop them up there. Anybody?
My question is, some of the homeschooling people, they don't want to sign the petition because they're afraid that if they take government money, that opens the door for the government coming in and controlling them or eliminating them. And so what's the response to that?
Okay, let's turn their question around. And listen very carefully, all of you homeschoolers out there. You're not paying attention. What they just said is, if I refuse to take government money, the government will not come in and interfere with me or shut me down. Mm-hmm. You believe that?
No, and that's what I tell them.
Thank you. Right. You see what I mean? You don't believe it. That's because it's not true. And I can tell you this right now, if we don't have an offense, if we don't go back out there, take our kids back, take our money back, and push back at these people, the homeschoolers are net. They're shutting down there's a bill up there to shut down the charter schools as we speak. Charter schools are dead without school choice. Right. We have to go out there and go on offense. I respectfully disagree with the homeschoolers. That narrow group, it's not all of them, it's just a small group of them, but you're not paying attention. They're not paying attention. There are no limits with the totalitarian state. And as long as they're holding our children as hostages, we're going to continue to put up with this. So you tell them to read history, pay closer attention this time.
Okay. And then I have a quick second question. Are there materials available in Spanish about?
Stephen.
Coming, under development. There will be.
Okay, great.
There will be.
Okay, thank you.
It'll have to be a huge part of what we're doing. We're recruiting, we're getting our call it our Black Caucus underway and our Hispanic Caucus. Right now, of course, we get a lot of crossover because not every person who's Latino speaks only Spanish. So we've got
Right.
tremendous Latino buy-in, but we'll get those materials in Spanish because so many of the parents only speak Spanish. In fact, they're not even voters, but they need to know about this.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I had a question. We're a small rural community. We have one high school and a couple different elementary schools, and one middle school. So one of the teachers asked me yesterday at Farmers Market, we had a booth set up, and it said, look, if you pull all of this has been a problem with us up here in the mountains, it's cyclical. If you pull our kids out because they have other choices, our schools are going to totally shut down. So what do we tell the small rural communities that have to face this type of a problem?
Well, there's a number of responses. First of all, keeping the public schools open is not my problem. Educating the children, if your parents educating your children properly, is the problem. And notice that now I know that the rural communities might be very different. It's not like LAUSD, but our schools in California are 48th in the nation. It doesn't get worse. We're the worst of the worst, even with low standards. So one of the problems we're going to have in this great debate here is the bureaucrats coming out and telling us about how disruptive freedom is to their bureaucracy. I don't care. You failed. You're out of business. Goodbye. If you get better, maybe you won't have to worry about losing customers, lady. If you're a teacher, get control of your own union. If it weren't for their union, they wouldn't have this problem. They've been disgraced by their own union. So they need to clean up their own house. And you and I, Linda, or Miss whoever's Mary Kay, you and I have no ability to improve those schools at all. Only the people who own and operate them, which would be the teachers, public employees, only they can change it. Do not take that bait. Ask them what they propose to do to solve this problem, right? It's our money, it's our kids. And by the way, this is a good time to remind all of you of how K-12 financing works. Under Prop 98, you pay 40% of all taxes, state revenues, go to this enterprise they laughingly call education in California, which means that from the time that you're a 4-year-old kid and you put your money up on the counter at Disneyland until the time that you drop dead and the coroner empties out your pockets, you are going to be paying taxes for that K-12 education. Never mistake, this is not public funding of anything. It's all private funding of public education that are failing. Stay on offense, folks. And up there in these communities, I predict that all these rural high schools, in fact, government schools everywhere, are going to get a lot better just knowing that there's competition out there. They're going to get together, they're going to tighten up, and they're going to say, hey, look, we can't teach this crap anymore, or we're going to bleed students. We'll have to shut this thing down. Our cost of doing business will be even higher. But even then, why do they have to shut down? We just found out here, the recently published article by the California Policy Center, that public expenditures under the new budgets, with all this CoronaCon money coming through, that per student expenditures may rise as high as $25,000. Even right now, there's about $500,000 per year under the current budget being spent per 25 students, right? 500,000. So I think that they need to get back and do some basic business planning. Don't you? You see what I mean? Get tough. Get on offense. They're losers. They need to be shut down. Next question.
Okay, Laurel?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I wanted to mention a couple things. One was that we have the farmers market in Poway that we've been doing, and we cover the names of the previous people that come through there because it is a public place, and we are a little concerned because cameras can go by. I have seen a couple people walk by and just sort of casually take a picture, And just to protect the people, I'm just keeping a slip of paper as we move down over the previous person, just for a tip, okay? I don't know if it helps, but I think it's good. The other thing is we've had a few teachers that some are just concerned about, like, will they be able to work? And you kind of addressed it a little bit. If this passes, where are they going to work? And I'm like, well, you're still going to be teaching. You're going to be teaching where you want to teach and teach better. So I think you kind of answered that one. But then I've had some people ask me too about, well, what about these students that go to school and they, like, if all the people are leaving and like how some of the kids might not be covered. They're worried about the kids that aren't covered. I don't know what they mean by that, but maybe because they're, alien, we're illegals, or I don't know what.
No, thank you for raising that. We have both by state law, federal law, and I believe also international conventions, as well as basic Christian decency. We have a moral, legal, and ethical obligation to educate every child and to care for him physically. Every child who's here, no matter how he got here, it's not our business. That child will receive an education. He is eligible because he's here, regardless of his legal status, present or future. That's it. Let me go back to that, to all the kids leaving. Well, you might say, hey, Miss Matilda, why in the world would all of the kids, quote unquote, be leaving that wonderful center of learning and academic excellence that you call your local school? I'm puzzled. Help me. Sound of silence and crickets, right? I think maybe you better start tightening up because there's some maniacs coming for your job. And you, if you're so good, don't worry, dear. There'll be competition. You'll go get a better job teaching students who want to be there, and you won't have to belong to that stupid union of yours.
Michael?
Right? Yes.
I would like to suggest, this is Stephen. There's a great example of the benefit to teachers currently going on in Arizona, and it's called micro schools. And what they do is they take a home and they have 10 students in it. So it's a little bit like homeschooling, but a small company could be just another teacher, assigns a teacher to each one of these in-home classrooms. The student teacher ratio in these is 10-1. So you have one teacher for 10 students, and it's in a very safe environment that is in someone's home. And they take the money that they have for school choice and use it for that. Their administrative cost is only about 4% of the revenues they take in from the state, and I would think California is probably 40 or 50% goes to administrative costs, and the rest goes directly to the teachers. So in the example that we're looking at in our state, you're probably going to be seeing somewhere around $13,000 a year, maybe more, maybe a little less, but to be right in that neighborhood, available per student per year in the educational savings account. That would mean it would be very, very easy for a teacher who is teaching in a safe environment in someone's home and only teaching 10 students to make somewhere around $120,000 a year. Now, who wouldn't want that job?
Right.
So there's advantages.
Next question.
Yes, I was wondering, you said that you're going to do it, change some of the literature into Spanish. I was wondering if you were maybe thinking of Mandarin or Cantonese. There's a lot of people that could use this type of information.
Well, we're going to assign that Mandarin translation to Dom Tallarico. Yeah, he's looking in today. No, we will. Yeah, there are a number of languages that will be doing it. We have an excellent, shall we say, ambassador to the Asian community, Mark Ang, and he has volunteered to help get that properly translated. And it's especially important because, as we know, what happens with state-run propaganda media like Univision, Telemundo, and the Asian newspapers, many of them, they're two different stories. They report the news differently in those publications. So we have to make sure that we have properly translated documents to push back, and we'll get maybe get a Mandarin page going on our website. So if I've got one, in fact, if anybody is volunteering to help with Spanish or Asian languages, Vietnamese, Mandarin, or whatever else, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Well, look, I'm going to turn it back over to Steve. Steve, take us home, my friend.
Well, thank you. I see that Tama is still there. I just saw her. I am so grateful for the work. I'm so grateful for all that everyone does. Now's the time to think about what you can do, what changes you can make, where you're willing to work, and please start identifying locations that you can set up. And when you plan an agreement, please let us know so we can get it posted on our map. So it'll be easy for people to simply look at the map where they know there's a place they can go. There's a new website that we'll be bringing out about the same time we send the bill in for title and summary. And it's going to look quite different than the other one, quite simpler, and it's much more oriented towards getting this particular job and work done versus sharing information about what's happening in the school systems. So I would thank everybody that's on board, especially our web hostess, Anne Marie, our president, Michael Alexander, Cheryl and Tama, Dr. Dale Broom, and with that, I bid you an all good evening and thank you again. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.